So welcome back to In the Moment with me, Alex Manzi. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, Alex, where on earth have you been? You haven't put out a podcast for months, have hardly seen you post any content. Like, what's been going on? And the answer is a lot. And what I want to do in this In Focus session is I want to share some of those learnings with you. So let's get into it. So as you guys know, I took a break from the podcast. I've taken quite a bit of a break from content production, shall we put it. And I've been putting a lot of work into myself, if I'm totally honest. And there's quite a lot of things that I want to discuss with you guys on this episode, which is kind of why these episodes are here. I'm always, willing to discuss on In Focus sessions things I've learned and share those with you, because they're things that have been really helpful for me, and I want you to see that, and I want you to see how you can learn to apply those things to yourself, right? That is kind of the purpose of this podcast, and that's what I want to do in this episode. So it's probably going to be a longer In Focus session than normal, than what we used to, but as I said, we roll with it, we move, and we go. And I got to say, it feels really good to be back live. Honestly, I've missed recording, I've missed making episodes, I've missed making video content, I've missed putting stuff out on Instagram. And, part of the reason that I took a break, if you listen to the previous episode, was because I was no longer enjoying that stuff. And that stuff's really important to me. It's really at my core. And what I found was I was creating content and recording podcast episodes from a place of fear and worry. Like, if I didn't keep up this, run of 4 years of podcasting and barely missing a week and 220 plus episodes, and what would happen if I took a break? I'm going to lose all my listeners. And, I've got a lot of faith in you guys. I like to think that you guys will come back when you see there's a new episode, right? And I think playing into the fear didn't help me be my best when doing interviews, when creating In Focus sessions. And I really wanted to connect to why was it that I started the podcast? Why was it that I wanted to start to share? Why was it that, the podcast has evolved over time and has become more of a place of me sharing my own experiences and, going deeper into people's stories and journeys and learnings and really hearing that. It's because that's the stuff that I enjoy. That's the stuff that I really enjoy. I enjoy my own journey. I enjoy my own growth. I enjoy the process of it, no matter how hard it can be at times. And don't get me wrong, it's hard. This stuff ain't easy. It's hard. But when I started to create from a place of fear, I was like, it's taken that edge off the enjoyment for me, and I'm far too much in my head about it. And that's why I had to take a break. And, I say to myself, when I feel ready and when I miss it and when I feel encouraged and inspired to start recording again, that's when I'm going to start recording again, because I'm playing back into those good feelings, those good vibes. I'm playing back into that fresh thinking, that clarity that, made me want to create this type of content in the first place. So as I said, I've got quite a few things and quite a lot of updates for you guys that have been happening over the past months. It's been since April, so what's that, 3 months since I last put out an episode. And one thing that happened, as you can hear from my cough, so I got COVID. Fortunately, I'm all good now. My symptoms are very mild, but I do have the remnants of the cough. So you'll have to excuse me for any random coughing throughout this episode, because unfortunately that lingers and I can't do much about it, other than taking Manuka honey, which I have been doing. But yeah, one of the things that has really shifted for me in the past few months is my level of commitment to who I am and what I do. And the reason I say that is because, in no uncertain terms, I've been working with a coach, as you guys know, for the past year. It's been in a group setting, and the end of that term came to pass in April, May time, I think it was. And I was really interested in doing one-to-one with him, because he's an amazing coach. I know how much it will help me as a person, and in turn that will help my business to grow. But I was absolutely bricking it at the amount of money that I was going to have to pay for this. And I did a lot of searching on okay, what does that say about myself? I'm not committed enough to this, to myself, to my business, to want to, invest a fairly large sum of money into coaching. And I realized that actually, do you know what? If I'm saying that my commitment's not high to this, who would I actually be? And I had a conversation with my coach about it, and he pointed me to this. Who am I being by committing to this process of coaching? And, it's a year-long one-to-one. We have a call every week, And that's the kind of format of it. And the money I pay is just essentially an exchange of my value and my energy and my commitment to myself. But when I was looking at that through my own thinking around it, it was like, well, I've got this money. Like, what if it doesn't work? What if I need the money for something else? Like, that's kind of my safety net, and et cetera, et cetera. And had all of these stories and narratives going on in my head. And it was blocking me from coming to the truth of the decision. And, that decision didn't necessarily have to be a yes, but it was blocking me from seeing the truth. And ultimately, I came to understand that I want to be doing this for the rest of my life, right? So that's a long time. That's 40, 50, 60, could be 60 years. I'd hope it's 60 years into my, 60s, 70s and 80s, should we say, right? And if I'm not committed at this stage, then who am I being like on that journey? I'm not committing to myself. Like, I know that investing in the coaching is going to ultimately be good for my business. I know that investing in the coaching is ultimately going to be good for me. But if I'm not willing to really go at it, like, who am I being? I'm being someone who plays into the fear, which is, again, going back to what was going on with me and content in the podcast. Like, I was playing into the fear. Who was I being? I was being someone who was coming from a fearful place. I was being someone who's coming from a place of scarcity rather than a place of abundance. And that was really informing the way that I approach situations, right? Because my thinking is what dictates my feelings. My feelings are a reflection of my thinking. And those feelings create the experience I have around anything. And the deeper I go into that, the more real that I see it is. And I think looking at it from a commitment perspective, and this is why, I wanted to bring this up with you guys today, is because I think that we don't really question our commitment to things. Like, we say, okay, right, yeah, I'm gonna read this book, yeah. And you might read it and you might just do it as a tick box exercise, or you might start reading it and you might put it down. Or you might sign up for a gym program, or you might get yourself into a relationship, whatever it is, a work project. Your level of commitment is created from you. It's got nothing to do with the project. It's got nothing to do with the gym classes. It's got nothing to do with the book. You are the one who has the commitment within you. And the question that I want you to consider is that of, who are you being by committing to something? Who are you being by committing to improving your health? Who are you being by committing to being totally present in your relationship? Who are you being by committing to investing in yourself in such a deep way? And that answer will show you the doors. And then on the flip side, who are you being if you are half-assed when you go to your gym class, if you are just sort of skim reading a book? Like, who are you being in that space there as well? And ask yourself, who do you want to be? Do you want to be the being which is just skim reading, is just showing up half-assed to gym classes? Or do you want to be the person who is committed to the thing that you have said you will do? And what will the possible outcome look like through that? And it's a really important question, because we don't ask ourselves that. We don't ask ourselves, like, who am I being through deciding to, like me, not eat meat anymore? Like, who am I being? I'm being someone entirely different to the person I was when I was eating meat, right? And that's a personal choice. I'm not trying to, impart that on anyone by any means. It's a personal choice for my own reasons. But the person I'm being dictates that choice, right? And that's what I want you to see. I want you to see, like, who are you being? How are you showing up? How are you committing to things? And who are you being with that commitment? Because that's going to serve you far more powerfully than just doing the thing for the sake of it, just reading the book for the sake of it, just going to the gym class because you've paid for it. Like, go to the gym class, do the work outside of the gym class that your instructor has possibly advised, do extra work around that, like, really commit to that process. And the person that you're being by doing that will filter out into every area of your life. It will filter out into the commitment you have in your relationship. It will filter out into the commitment you have at work, because the way that you're being with any decision is the way that you're being with every decision. And I really want that to land. I really want you to sit with that. Like, who are you being through your commitments and the way that you are committing to things, the way that you're showing up to things? Because, like I said, that's going to serve you far more powerfully than whether you do that thing or not. And that kind of leads on really well, actually, to the next point I wanted to talk about, which is relationships. Because one of the things that has really shifted for me recently is the way that I approach my relationship with my girlfriend. Now, we've been together over a year now. The relationship's been amazing. It's been great. But as relationships do, there's ups, there's downs, there's things you need to discuss, there's things that need to be worked on, there's things you need to make each other aware of. And the thing that's really shifted my perspective on this is I used to look at the relationship as it's a me and a her thing. It's me versus you in a way, like your opinions, my boundaries, your boundaries, this, that, and the other, right? But I've scrapped all that because I don't want to look at it like that, because that's straight away saying like there has to be a conflict, right? There has to be a conflict of interest in way. And what's shifted for me is starting to see the relationship as being part of a team. Like, we are a team. We're in this together. We've created this together. Like, so I want to play the role of being someone who's in a team. And that doesn't mean I can't go out of my way and, have opinions about things and share my point of view on things. No, it's the opposite. It's like I'm doing that in a team setting, right? And it doesn't mean necessarily that my opinions or my things are right or wrong, and vice versa with hers. But it does mean that we're allowed to approach a relationship from a very powerful state of being, right? And what I mean is, like, if I'm approaching a relationship from a space of like, yeah, well, I'm just wanting to receive this and this is what I want to get from it, I'm not really thinking about what I need to give in order to get the best out of the relationship, then I'm treating that as a me versus you. Whereas if I'm approaching it from a team point of view and it being teamwork, what I'm saying is, you know what, let's work on this together. Like, what do we need to work on? What's not going well? What is going well? And taking the judgment out of that and just really hearing each other has been really powerful. And me and my girlfriend have started to do this thing where every couple of weeks we'll have like a team talk, and we'll talk about things that are maybe bugged us or things that, we want to improve or work on from both sides, right? And again, it's doing it without judgment and doing it from a place of like, okay, we want this relationship to grow. We want this relationship to blossom. We want it to continue to grow and blossom. And the only way we can do that is by treating it as a team. And this doesn't necessarily just have to be of a partner. Like, this can be at work with your colleagues, with your boss. This can be with your children, with your family, with your friends. Like, treat those relationships as being part of a team. Like, first of all, who do you want to be on your team? Like, who are the people you want in your corner? Because they're the people you're going to be spending a lot of time with. And if those people are the people that are raising you up and bringing the best out of you, then maybe they're the people you want in your team, right? And something I want you to consider is, and this is something that I've been considering, is like, what am I doing in all of my relationships to bring the best out of the other person? And what is the other person doing to bring the best out of me? And I really want you to see that, because that's where powerful relationships are formed. And I had a really amazing conversation with my coach about this, because he's just recently gotten himself into a relationship, and he started to change a lot of the, I wouldn't say change, but pull together the team that he wants around him in terms of friends and clients and stuff like that. And it was so powerful to hear his perspective, because he was like, you got to look at it from creating a squad. Like, if you were a football manager, you would pick the best players available to you in order to win a match, right? Because that's what you want on your team in order to do well, in order for your players to thrive on the pitch so that you can get a result. And whilst I'm not saying that a relationship has to be about a certain result, but taking that same approach of like, okay, who are the people I want in my squad? Who are the people I want around me? Who are the people I want to be having conversations with? Really creates a powerful relationship, because you're both giving and taking and bringing the best out of each other in those relationships. And it's such a different approach to just hanging out with someone for the sake of it, because they've been a friend for so many years, or because you met them here, or because you have these memories together. And I want you to even look at, like, how are you spending time with people? Are you spending time gossiping, shooting the shit, like going out drinking, boozing, partying? Or are you spending time like having meaningful conversations? Are you spending time doing things that are facilitating both of your growth, as well as helping the relationship to blossom and bloom, right? because that's what a relationship is about. A relationship is about bringing each other up. It's not about pushing each other down, or trying to pick on each other's insecurities or whatever. It's about helping each other thrive. And the more powerfully you're able to do that, the more powerfully you're able to create a relationship which is a lot more sustainable moving forward, but is a lot more geared towards growth, towards thriving, towards just generally like becoming a better version of you. And I don't say that lightly. I say that with like, peeling away the layers of stuff that we have learned and the ideas and the concepts, and really allowing the true you to shine. That's what we talk about when we're saying better version of you. We're saying to allow the true you to come through. And if the person that you have a relationship with, be it a partner, a colleague, a boss, a friend, a family member, isn't doing that, then you maybe want to question, is this someone I want to keep in my life? Or is this someone that I want to open up that line of communication with to help them see this? And I'd encourage you to have these conversations with people that you have relationships with. Like, I've done it with some friends. I've done it with my girlfriend. Like, I want them to see how I am approaching this relationship, because I want them to meet me halfway with that, because that's where we're both going to grow. That's where we're both going to have so much more power within our relationship, and that's going to ultimately benefit us long term. And it's just something that has transformed my approach to particularly my relationship with my girlfriend, particularly with my friends, and it's starting to have that same level of application or whatever to other relationships. And that's what I'm starting to see. Like, these shifts are actually happening. And I'm not just talking about this stuff like, oh yeah, I'm going to have a difficult conversation. Oh yeah, I'm going to say like, oh, this, that, and the other. Like, actually doing it, actually putting in the work, actually applying the learnings, actually, having the deep, meaningful conversations that's going to facilitate your growth is what's going to create that true you. It is going to create the space for that true you to come out and to thrive in this world. And that is powerful relationship building, relationship management, whatever you want to call it. It's allowing a space for you and the other person. It could be multiple people to thrive in. And that is one of the biggest things I've learned over these few months, is like just having time away from, being online, creating content, editing, and just actually spending time, in somewhat virtually or in face to face with people is far more powerful than just having like those, small talk type conversations. Like, actually getting into the meaningful stuff is beneficial for both parties. And I really want you to see that. And I really want you to, like I said, I would encourage you to have those conversations with your partner, your friends, your family, your work colleagues. Say, look, this is how I want to be approaching this relationship. This is what I see myself bring into this relationship in terms of getting the best out of you. And here's what you can do to help get the best out of me, and start a conversation based off of that, because that's going to serve you far more powerfully than just sailing along and your relationships might be good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're bad. They might be good, but they're just sailing along at the same level. Like, they can increase and get better and better and better, and you can thrive even more than you already are in these relationships by having these conversations. And it ties into the third thing I want to talk about, which is like bringing a high level of consciousness to the things you're doing, the things you're spending your time doing. Because ultimately, the higher the level of consciousness you bring to something, the more impact that's going to have on you, and the more you're going to get from it. And again, I had a conversation with my coach about this, where he was talking about he's really into his anime and some of the animes that he's been watching, and by watching them with a high level of consciousness, he's allowing himself to take learnings, although it's like, animation and it's cartoon and whatever. He's allowing himself to take learnings from them, which he can then apply to his own life. And I've noticed that I do the same. Like, if I really apply a high level of consciousness to something, like if my coach says to me, hey Alex, read this book, it's going to be really good for you, I'm going to give a lot more consciousness and apply a lot higher level of consciousness to that book than I would if it's just a book that I pick off my shelf because I fancy reading it. Because I'm like, okay, well, my coach has said I really need to read this book because it's gonna help me. I'm gonna make sure I read it back to front and extract as much as I can from it. Heck, I might even go over it again and read it a second time just to make sure I'm taking as much as I can from it, because I'm giving such a high level of consciousness to it. I'm putting like a laser focus on it, And it's like when your light is just shining, it's just like, if you ever seen a light shine in the dark, it's very broad, it's very, it just lights up and it spreads, right? But when you have that laser focus, that high level of consciousness on something, if you shine a laser in the dark, it cuts through the dark and it's very like pinpoint, right? And that's a high level of consciousness that I want you to apply to things that you're doing. And one of the things that I was saying to my coach was like, I've been watching some TV series recently. I've been watching a lot of the Marvel stuff when I was ill. With COVID, I was watching a lot of like Marvel films, and then I started to watch some of the series. And when I was feeling better and I started watching the series, the one I've been watching recently, just finished, as Loki, with a high level of consciousness, I was taking way more from that story. Although it's like, Marvel and it's to do with comic books and superheroes and whatever, I took so much from that series than I've ever taken from any series I've ever watched, because I applied such a high level of consciousness to it. I wasn't just watching it for the sake of it. It wasn't just dumb TV that I'm watching. I was like really extracting things from each episode and then the whole series overall. And one of the things I love about the series is, and I don't want to, throw any spoilers in there for anyone, so I'm going to just spoiler alert just in case. It essentially becomes a story about learning to love yourself and accept yourself. And I wouldn't have seen that if I wasn't applying such a high level of consciousness to watching these episodes. If I was just like, yeah, okay, cool, this is cool, I'm just going to chill and I'm going to watch it. Like, although I was watching it in my time off and in the evenings, I was still like giving that level of consciousness to it, and I was able to extract a lot more from it. And this is what I'm talking about when I say I want you to think about the level of consciousness that you're bringing to stuff. And it ties back into the commitment point from the beginning, right? When you go to the gym, how high is your level of consciousness when you're in the gym? Are you just going through the motions, or are you really laser focused on what you're doing in that moment? When you read a book, when you watch a TV program, when you have a conversation with your best friend, when you speak to your boss about your goals at work, like, are you really applying a high level of consciousness to those conversations, or are you just going through the motions in autopilot and having those conversations for the sake of it? Because you're going to get a lot more from those conversations by applying a high level of consciousness. Like I went to a friend of mine's kid's birthday on the weekend, and he's 12, and he's the most amazing 12-year-old kid I've met in my life, including myself when I was 12. And I apply such a high level of consciousness to the conversations I have with him, because I find him so fascinating as a person, as a human, and I learn from him. And he's 12, but I'm able to see that I can learn from him and the way he views the world and the things that he says and the way that he applies himself to things. I can see that because I'm willing to apply the level of consciousness to those conversations, right? And I'm able to see that I can learn from it. If I don't, and I just see him as some kid and I'm having a conversation with him, I'm not going to take anything from it other than like I just spent some time with some kid. That's it. But no, like I always take something from the conversations because I really give a level of consciousness to those conversations. So this doesn't have to apply to the content that you consume or the things that you do. Like, it can apply to the conversations you have, the food that you're eating, the way that you're approaching your work, the gym sessions that you're doing. Like, it can apply to so many different areas of your life, and it can really impact you in so many ways. Because, if you're just watching, and it doesn't even have to be something that's super like smart and intellectual. Like, I was watching Loki, like it's a superhero TV series, but I was able to extract something from it that I was learning from it whilst I was watching it, because I was willing to sit there and give such a high level of consciousness to it. And that's been really impactful for me, because I'm starting to do that more and more and more when I have coaching conversations, when I read certain books, when I read art. Like, even if I'm just watching a YouTube video about Call of Duty, like I won't be there on my phone and just like, yeah, listening and whatever. I'll be really like watching this video because I want to get the information from it. I want to give that level of consciousness to that video so that I can really take something from it and not it just be something that I'm just watching for the sake of it, right? And that's really impactful. Like, it doesn't have to matter what it is that you're doing or watching or listening to or reading. Like, it's the level of consciousness that you're bringing to that thing. Like my coach, he was watching anime, he was watching essentially cartoons, but he was still able to take stuff from it. Like, he was talking to me about what he's learned from Transformers, which, you know, is incredible. Like, why can't we learn things from Transformers? Like, if you're not willing to look at it from a point of view of like, okay, what can I get from this? What is really going on here? What can I learn? Then you're never going to be able to see that for yourself. You're just going to see it as some dumb cartoon. So they're just like a few of the things that have been going on for me. Like, I really could make this episode twice as long. But I think there's a lot there for you to take away. And, you know, I'd love to know what has really resonated with you about this episode. Like, what's something that you've really taken from this episode? Like, and again, I'd even encourage you to go and listen to it a second time and apply a high level of consciousness to it. And then let me know, what have you really taken from this episode? What's the learning? What's the insight that you've got from this conversation, from this episode, that's going to be really helpful for you? And to do that, just hit me up on Instagram at I am Alex Manzi. Shoot me a DM. Let me know what you're learning as well from this episode. And I'd love to just have that conversation with you and hear more about why it was impactful for you.